Anti-black racism is the law of the land. It is the prevailing economic, political, and social order of the nation and the world. So when some half-cocked bigot tells you that their problem is racial, that means it's racial. And when they tell you it's not racial, that means it's really racial. Anti-black racism is also the political platforms of both the major parties. Both parties work for the same white supremacist masters, so whether it's Democrats or Republicans in office is irrelevant. However, most of the society's citizens have bought into the lie that this or that party is on their side. And since perception is reality, that means for at least 85% of the country, it does matter who's in charge. Wages have been stagnant for 2 generations, jobs have left the country, never to return, and standards of living have dropped. Yet the people who vote Republican have convinced themselves that the GOP has done wondrous things for them. They just can't tell anyone what those things are. If you condition a group of people to think that they're superior, then giving them psychic benefits can be more important than receiving tangible benefits. The social, economic position of the dominant society is not under threat, but the psychic position of them is the inherent in-crowd, that being classified as white gives you benefits simply as a matter of course, that is under threat. And to merely have that intangible, largely meaningless psychological masturbatory benefit being challenged has made a lot of them go bonkers. Those are the right and the reactionary wing of politics, so of course they'll be the loudest and the wrongest. But what of those on the left? Apparently, not enough of them are on board with propping up whiteness, or at least that's what the left arm of white supremacy believes. So the Democrats are sending in the clowns. They need to get as many people as possible to attack all the things that black people have successfully forced into the political discourse. They're looking at where the trend line is going if it isn't stopped, and where it's going is toward justice, the very thing that both the major parties were created to prevent. You need to understand exactly how the enemy operates, particularly its propaganda arm, the white media. When they say Black Lives Matters, even though they're not specifically talking about anything that we have begun, whenever they start railing against what it is they don't like, they're talking about us. Whenever they talk about woke, they don't say anything about transgender bathrooms. They don't say anything about feminine rhetoric. What they talk about is punishing the police. That's what woke means. It means punishing the police, breaking the enforcement arm of white supremacy. Because anytime they mention it, that's the first and only thing they talk about. Wokeness has nothing to do with the LGBT community at all. You don't see anyone on a jihad about that. Because that's what they understand that they have to protect. There's certain ideologies that have to be protected, and there is one in particular, black empowerment, that must be attacked and must be destroyed at all costs. So make no mistake, no matter what you may think of the origins of these terms, even if you say we have nothing to do with it, you would be right. But that doesn't change the fact that that is how these white supremacist operatives are using these terms. They're using them as proxies and as euphemisms for us, for the black empowerment sphere, the black grassroots. We are who and what they are attempting to delegitimize and diminish. And this is not some new political operation. It's been going on for a long time now, for at least the last few years. The first high-profile attack came from former president in empty suit Barack Obama. He was roundly praised by open white supremacists for his attacks on woke advocacy. People like Ann Coulter and Tomi Lahren were singing his praises. He was also praised by phony liberals like Andrew Yang. They all know what woke is code for. It's code for black people, particularly the black grassroots. Their problem is not with racists being called out. Their problem is that the people calling out the racists have shown that they can attach a social penalty to practicing anti-black racism. That's the problem. And if these people can demonstrate that they can do this, they can actually punish you in a social sense for practicing anti-black racism, what happens if these guys get their hands on the levers of power? They'll be able to attach real penalties to anti-black racism. So you have the white supremacists on the left and the right and their black bootlick minions who are attempting to head that off now. And that's why you have both the Democrats and the Republicans on the exact same page attacking the exact same enemy, us. So here comes Barack Obama, who's giving us his empty rhetoric, as if anyone's going to listen to him. This idea of purity, and you're never compromised, and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws. Well, we know what the flip side of that is. People who do really bad stuff, well, they've got virtues too. See, that's the flip side of that statement. Well, people who do really good stuff have flaws. Well, but Obama, you didn't have flaws. You had a whole bunch of immoral strains running through you. You were part of the problem. These aren't flaws. What Obama did goes way the hell beyond flaws. But you got this whitewashing and minimizing by the white media and their minions going on. And what is it that they're angry about? What is it that Obama's so mad about? Is anyone being shot or killed? Is anyone being beheaded? Anyone's houses getting burned down? No, what's happening is you have people who are speaking in a voice loud enough to be heard. You call yourself practicing anti-black racism. Now there are people with a voice loud enough to be heard who can call you out on it. A social penalty attaches. And that's what he's angry about. He's not angry about black people being killed in the streets. Notice he's not saying anything about that. He ain't worked up about that. He's not getting exercise over that. Oh, but there's some people on Twitter posting something, and as far as he's concerned, you are infringing upon the right of this person to say that you're not a human being and to advocate that you should be killed. And if you can't tolerate somebody saying you should be killed, then there's something wrong with you. That's the narrative the white media wants to push. If you can't just sit there and let other people dehumanize you and advocate that you need to be killed or done away with, and that society has a right to kill you, well, there's something wrong with you if you have a problem with that. Notice how it never goes in the opposite direction. Nobody ever decides that they're going to be doing speeches saying, all these white people with all this phony outrage over critical race theory, all of this phony outrage and moral panic, trying to pretend as if they're offended just because people are saying we're going to teach history, we're going to go ahead and tell the pig simple truth that racism exists and ain't a small thing, and that every white person in America has benefited from racism because that's what it was created to do. It was created to benefit those classified as white. These are just the pig simple facts. Nobody is out there saying all these white people are wrong. The narrative only goes in one direction. And it doesn't matter in terms of numbers. This is not a matter of, well, white people are a numerical majority. Their numbers are falling. If you take a look at, say, places like Latin America, you see the direction they want to go in because the white minorities, the blancos in Latin America, the media never criticizes them. The media never says, hey, these guys who control all the wealth and all the land and these guys who make all the rules, they're to blame. Media never does that. So it's not a numbers game. It's a skin color game. What happened was the grassroots were able to do an end run around and vault over the gatekeepers. The Barack Obamas and the Letta Lynches and the Eric Holders and all the other empty suits who were supposed to be placeholders for white supremacy to get you to sit on your hands and wait to see if they would do something. The people decided to do something, and that's what Obama's mad about. His white paymasters have told him, you need to get out there and do something, nigger. There is no law that can stop or prohibit the social penalties that the grassroots have put in place. So we see the Democrats are putting aside any pretense of being different than the Republicans. But Obama's comments were in 2019. Just the next year, we see nigga Jim Clyburn. He's going ahead and jumping in. The Democrats won the presidential election in 2020. They held on to the House and they captured the Senate. You would think that nobody would have any complaints to make. But Jim Clyburn, he had a complaint to make. Stop the sloganizer. All this talk about defund the police. Y'all cost Jaime Harrison his election. All this stuff. Stop sloganizing.
That phrase, defund the police, cost Jaime Harrison tremendously. I want everybody in my caucus to be as practical as I am.
If you could have a caucus meeting right now and you would or tell folks what they should do differently, given the losses that we have, what would you say to them?
Stop sloganeering. Sloganeering kills people. Sloganeering destroys movements. Stop sloganeering.
Oz is Jim Clyburn, and I endorse this message. I've never heard of any sloganeering that's killed movements. I've heard and seen the FBI kill movements, though. And the FBI would do it by having some black bootlick like a Jim Clyburn insinuate his way into the movement and undermine it and demoralize it and try to derange and distract it from within. We've seen that happen plenty of times. We've seen plenty of movements being killed by a bunch of black bootlicks working for the FBI, working for the U.S. government, like Jim Clyburn. Sloganizing kills. Yeah, because the white supremacists with guns and badges, they don't. Of course, he never bothered to say what Jaime Harrison would do for black voters, which is the reason that he lost. Black voters recognize Jaime Harrison, just like they recognize Jim Clyburn. At least black folks outside of his district recognize him as being a professional BS artist. He thought that he could bluff his way past voters. Jaime Harrison thought he could bluff his way past black voters, not promise anything, not pledge anything, nothing of substance. And he thought that he was going to baffle him with BS, and it didn't work. The age-old tried and true strategy of just bury them in a bunch of meaningless phrases and gibberish and talking points, and we're just going to heap on the word salad to the sky. That's what they always do, and it didn't work this time. And Jim Clyburn's at the annual fish fry going, I don't know what went wrong. Obviously, it can't be nothing that we did. We's just perfect. It must be them damn folks over there talking about punish the police. It's all they damn fault. Notice how none of these scumbags ever takes personal responsibility for their losses. It's never their fault. They never look and say, well, what could we have done with our platform to attract more of our people, to get out the vote, to galvanize people? It's never their fault. They never look and say, you know what, we messed up. Instead of, well, it's you dang activists and your slogans. Y'all done ran people off. Yeah, it's not your completely and thoroughly non-existent voter outreach. It's not your completely and thoroughly anemic and irrelevant platform, which was nothing more than a bunch of empty platitudes and a bunch of empty talking points. That didn't run people off. It was the people who were on the sidelines saying, here's what you got to do to get my vote. That's what ran people off. You cannot just show up and say, Lindsey Graham, he's really no different than Trump. He's a Trump supporter. That ain't enough. You got to say what the hell you're going to do. You can't just tell us what you're against. You got to tell us what you're for. What are you going to do for us? Well, I'm not Lindsey Graham, and that's all I have to be. I don't have to do anything for you. I'm not Lindsey Graham, and that's enough. And the voters told Jaime Harrison, take your raggedy behind out of here, because that ain't enough. But since nigga Jim hasn't done anything for black people, and he keeps getting reelected, I suppose it makes sense that it would never occur to him that maybe not doing anything for the voters outside of his district anyway, that would be a problem. Yeah, because Clyburn, he tried to sell himself as the most powerful black politician in America. And the black grassroots castrated him politically in front of the world and showed, nah, this dude, he ain't no kingmaker. He's got some buck-dancing idiots in his area who can be bought off for a fish fry. They sold their souls for some catfish nuggets. That's the kind of stepping fish at Negroes you got in Jim Clyburn's district. But outside of that, he calls no shots. He pulls no strings. At least low-down Willie Brown was smart enough not to pretend to be some sort of kingmaker outside of California. He knew what his place was. He knew what his boundaries were. He knew his limitations. Not Jim Clyburn. This old bastard, this crusty old scumbag, older than dirt and ugly as sin. Oh, as far as he's concerned, he's playing up the idea that he's a black kingmaker. Because, of course, that's how you get the bribe money from the white powers that be. Y'all need me. I can motivate some votes. I can help get some people elected office. You just make sure you grease my palm a little bit. And give my daughter over here. She's illiterate. Just make sure to give her a patronage job. Don't make sure it don't involve no letters or numbers. She can't read and can't count. So just give her a little patronage job. That'd be enough for us. And we'll say whatever you want. Stop sloganizing. See, I'm real good. I'll tell them little young whippersnappers out there to shut up. That's what Clyburn's about. Keep in mind, Clyburn was attacking woke activists specifically on the charge of punishing the police. And this even though the Democrats won the Senate and won the White House, and yet he was mad as hell. So what does that tell you? The fact that he would launch such an attack after Democrats had won the White House, that told you that there was a program at work. Like so much Nazi propaganda, the DNC had sent out the talking points from the DNC High Command, telling everybody, hey, them grassroots folks, we're not going to let them get into the habit of thinking that they're going to be setting policy. They're not going to be pushing us around. They're attaching a social penalty to anti-black racism. It's only a matter of time before they attach a political and economic penalty to those of us who are supposed to be the commissar class. We're supposed to be the administrative arm of white supremacy, and they're going to start attaching penalties to us if we don't stop them. So we got to turn everyone against them, starting with Democrats. We're going to be turning all those people who are in the streets with them. We're going to start telling them, well, you guys are going to hand the Republicans back control of the government if you don't stop it. You're going to be the reason why. We're going to turn everyone against these guys and say that they're the biggest threat to democracy because they're helping the Republicans. Well, why don't you just do what they say? Oh, well, we can't do what they say. You got a majority of voters with, no, it's not popular. It's not popular. What do you mean it ain't popular? That's how you got the White House and the Senate. Well, it ain't popular because we say it ain't popular with us. And that's all it needs to be unpopular with. That's the game going on here. Punishing the police is fine with the voters, but it's not fine with the DNC leadership, because it's not fine with their white elite paymasters. And so the white right and the Democrats have engaged in a joint propaganda anti-black offensive. Both of them are on the same page. There will be no efforts to punish the police. Now, they use the phony talking point that, well, there's a vote on defund the police. Well, gee, in that case, then, why don't you decide that you're going to instead end qualified immunity? Notice how nobody's talking about that. See, defund the police, that's something they can point to and say, well, we don't have anything that's going to be coming after that. It's just defund the police. And people are going to look and go, well, hell, if you're going to be defunding the police, what do we do in the event of some sort of breaking of the law? How about this? You can go ahead and keep the police, but you're going to have to end qualified immunity, and we're going to have to see police being carted out in handcuffs day in and day out. You do that, you can keep your police departments. How about that? They looked and said, hell no, this is an all or nothing proposition. And this is the Democrats doing this. They're the ones who are trying to create a phony narrative that, oh, well, defund the police. People don't really want that. Nobody wants the police punished, No different than the Republicans, both of them on the same team. Now, we know that qualified immunity is not really a problem, especially not in the case of black officers accused of mistreating a white person. A black cop who's accused of harming a white person, they get arrested immediately. It doesn't take a year to do it. It doesn't take protests and demonstrations to do it. Black officer accused of harming a white person, you get prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Oh yeah, if you're a black cop who's accused of harming a white person, all of a sudden it doesn't take years to do an investigation. All of a sudden there's nobody wondering, is he going to get indicted? They know you're going to get indicted. They know you're going to trial. And all of a sudden the police unions are not on a tear saying back the blue and respect the badge. And the white media is not smearing the so-called alleged phony victim. All of a sudden, the white media is not digging up dirt on the alleged victim. At least all you can do is call them an accuser. So if you're a white person who accuses a black cop of doing something against you, the white media doesn't say, well, let's go ahead and dig in your past. You got any priors? How about your parents? All of a sudden, a grand jury can bring back an indictment, and it's not a problem. All of a sudden, qualified immunity is no longer a barrier. All of a sudden, I feared for my life is no longer a defense. All of a sudden, the Jeffrey Jerkoff Toobins and other scum in the white media, they're no longer saying how hard it is to convict a police officer. If you're black and you get accused by a white person, all of a sudden, it's just a matter of doing the paperwork to put you in prison for 20 to life. So we know that all this talk about qualified immunity is nothing more than a pretense that the white power structure points to as an excuse for not enforcing the law against white supremacists who harm black people. We know that that's what it really is. Qualified immunity is not a problem. Qualified immunity is still the law of the land, and yet Michael Slager's in prison. Daniel Holtzclaw is still cooling his heels for the rest of his life. Derek Chauvin's going to be doing 20 plus years for the murder of George Floyd, and that's the problem that they have. They see that what's happening here is that a new normal is being established. 25 years for harming a black person. They're like, well, hell, if they push for 25 years, it doesn't take much imagination to see that they can then push that thing to 40 years or life. Oh, if you want to be a cop and have a badge and you want extraordinary protection under law, well, if you even harm a police officer, that's 25 years. Well, the opposite's also true. If you wear a badge and you break the law, then you're going to get extraordinary punishment. That's the normal, the standard that they're terrified is going to be put in place if they don't stop it now. The only police who it's ever difficult to charge or convict are the white ones, and that's the entire point, and both parties are on board with that. Republicans openly support police violence against black people, and they say that they'll defend it to the death. Democrats pretend to show phony sympathy with us and say something ought to be done, but then they don't do anything, so they're giving support by omission. By refusing to punish the white supremacists, they are supporting them. Because right now, the white supremacists, they're the ones who have the policies they want because the people who support them and who are helping to enforce anti-black racism, they're the ones who run the police departments. They're the ones who are in the DA's offices. They're the ones who are sitting on the judges' benches. They're the ones in the legislature. So the white supremacists have captured all of these arenas of the society where the laws get made and get enforced. Unless you're fighting to crush that and destroy that, then you are upholding white supremacy full stop. But of course, America's favorite sharecropper, Negro Jim Clyburn, he wasn't the end of this woke as a proxy for black demands assault. Now that you had Obama, your biracial president, and Negro Jim Clyburn, the Democrats' favorite highest-ranking bootlick, now that you had some Negro puppets who spouted the gibberish, now it's time for the white ones. Now the white ones feel like they've got the clearance and cover now, because that's how it works. They tell their black puppets, you guys get out there first and you go ahead and start saying this stuff. Because, if we say it, you know how it's going to look. So you guys got to do it first. You got to do it first, and then we'll follow up after you. And like clockwork, after the first black bootlicks spew the lies, in come the white ones. The Democrats' asinine and failed strategists like James Carville, he shows up with this wokism. Y'all need to go to rehab or something. This wokism is losing elections. It's politically unpopular. And the Republicans, they're going to retake Congress next year. Now, it ain't going to be because of our failed policies. Inflation is sky high. I mean, that's because y'all wokism. Y'all stop saying defund the police, and inflation will come back down. Them prices at the gas pump, that's because of y'all. If y'all stop saying the police should be defunded, them gas prices will come back down. That's what James Carville wants people to believe. At no point does the Cajun Skeletor mention that the Democrats have done nothing for black voters and nothing to improve the lives of the people who voted for them. Inflation is skyrocketing, and the economic condition of the nation, that's what's going to determine who holds on to Congress. You could go ahead and abolish all the thugs in blue tomorrow morning. As long as it doesn't affect prices at the grocery store, nobody's going to give a damn. But the white elites, the multimillionaires and billionaire donor class who the Democrats work for and carry water for, well, they're very much concerned about that. At this point, they want to make sure they have an excuse ready to go when they lose next year, because that's the narrative that they're trying to set up. Hell, they did it right after they won office last year. You had the Democrats win the White House and won the Senate, and you had Negro Jim Clyburn saying, stop sloganizing, y'all, cost us elections, but you won the elections. Y'all gonna cost us everything. Yeah, so you see that they had this little narrative here that they're going to be pushing no matter how the election turns out. This is the ruling class trying to strike back, or should I say strike black. So, with the black bootlicks like Clyburn and the biracial Obama bootlick having gone ahead and been the thin end of the wedge, the white ones come in. Here comes the James Carvilles, and here come the other clowns from the DNC, now that they feel that they have entree to spew their lies. Carville, he hasn't won a doggone political contest since 1992. Practically all of his books are about Democrats getting beat. How can the Democrats keep getting beat when they have such stellar leadership as James Carville? Say, wasn't James Carville backing Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns? How'd that turn out? Is he going to blame wokism for her losing in 2016? Is he going to blame wokism for her losing to Obama back in 2008 and getting drummed out of the doggone Democratic primary? Is he going to blame wokism for that in 2008? Was there some defund the police movement that he could blame for that one too? Yeah, every horse that Carville bets on loses. If this wrinkled up racist says red, you better say black. But of course, now that you had the white racists on the left who feel that they've now got their opening to finally spew the party line against black empowerment, right behind them you got some more bootlicks coming in, and this brings us to Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton has recently attacked demands to punish the police, and he's tried to talk around it, but the white media wants to make it clear. What Sharpton was saying? See, Sharpton's saying it too. Sharpton's saying, yeah, apparently, according to Sharpton, it's not practical. He says that you're going too far. You're going to alienate moderates and independents. All this talk about defunding the police. So you guys need to calm down. And now you see why it is that Al Sharpton's showing up all over the place. Oh, you thought that because he showed up at the trial of the murderers of Ahmaud Arbery, that apparently that means he's on the side of the angels. No, that's just white supremacy, as Neely Fuller said, taking both sides of the conversation. But you need to understand something. A couple of weeks ago, after the Virginia gubernatorial race, where Terry McAuliffe promised black people nothing, so black people promised him no votes, Al Sharpton wanted to make sure that he earned those couple little butter biscuits that he gets from his little weekend gig on MSNBC, which is the first steady job he's had in his entire life, by the way. He's sitting here now, he's just spouting and repeating the white leftist line, chapter and verse. He knows what his job is. All they had to do was offer him a steady paycheck, offer him gainful employment, and that was enough for him. So while the white media tries to get us to think that he's down with the people because a racist lawyer said he doesn't want Sharpton at the trial of the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, we're supposed to be looking and going, oh, that must mean he's on the level. Don't buy it. Now, Sharpton's little quote that they've been making such hay out of is he said, "We're going to have to engage more methodically and strategically in the process because we could lose it all." We? What's this we stuff? What the hell stuff do black people have? Joe Biden's president, Kamala Harris vice president, Democrats control the House and the Senate. What the hell have black people gotten in the last year? What the hell have we got? Lose it all. What the hell do we have? As Malcolm said, lose it all. You already lost it all over here. So what the hell do we have to gain? What have we gained? We could lose it all. What's this we stuff? What the hell is this all? What's this all that we're going to lose? What, have we gotten qualified immunity? Are there laws in the books now that give harsher penalties to the police and make it where it's going to be easier to put the bastards in jail? No. Okay, well, how about reparations? We got that? No. Police Accountability Commission? No. Is there going to be anything? What the hell have we gotten? Have we gotten a damn thing? We're going to lose it all. Lose what? We ain't got a damn thing. Even the Biden butt kissers who supported him and Kamala Harris, what the hell have you gotten? Biden promised you lift every voice, and he's dropped that. He ain't even mentioned it. Oh yeah, your Police Accountability Commission at the presidential level, he kicked that one to Congress and Nancy Pelosi kicked it out the door. So what's this? We're going to lose it all. Looks like what few phony promises you got, you already done lost them. So what's this stupid talk as if we could lose it all? Look how much we is gained. Look how much we is gotten. We could lose all of this. We don't want to lose all we done gained. Ain't gained a damn thing. So what the hell is this mushmouth moron talking about? We could lose it all. Oh yeah, Sharpton's on the team now. He feels that he's on the inside looking out. He's on the inside with the DNC. So when he says we, he ain't talking about black people. He's talking about him and his white Democrat paymasters. We've got to really bring everybody together and understand that this is a wake-up call, and those really committed to voting rights and police reform need to deal with it in a practical way. Wow, Sharpton's attacking woke activists on the grounds that they're not being impractical. That sounds familiar for some reason.
I want everybody in my caucus to be as practical as I am.
So there you have it. They're all using the same wording, the exact same verbiage, just not practical. That's how you know the DNC talking points were sent out and the bootlicks picked them up, and it's a matter of we're going to get on code and use the exact same verbiage. Words matter, family. When somebody sits here and says voting rights, that doesn't tell me anything. And when somebody says police reform, we don't need police reform. You cannot reform a white supremacist. Derek Chauvin could never be reformed. Michael Slager could never be reformed. The animals who've been murdering black people, Amber Geiger, she could never be reformed. These animals cannot be reformed. They can only be punished. We don't need police reform. That's the problem. We need police punishment. And none of them will say that word. None of them are going to say punishment. They know we can't say that word. We can't say that. You have to say reform. That's why I showed you when Joe Biden called himself talking to the police a couple of weeks ago, talking about training. What's your training? Well, we want to make sure you guys get better training. The problem has not been those at the grassroots. If Sharpton's so hot and bothered about people who are moderates being alienated or independents who don't like talk of violent protests, we didn't have talk of violent protests on January 6th. You had the real thing, but it wasn't the black grassroots who were doing it. And notice how nobody ever says, well, gee, if after all that violence at the Capitol on January 6th, if you got these Republicans who have anyone willing to vote for them after January 6th, that just proves America is a racist country through and through. That there still is at least 50% of the country who are just irredeemable white supremacist racists. Notice how nobody ever says that. That's never the conversation. That's the white media's job. To be psychological comfort food for racists. Sharpton has the nerve to talk about being practical. Can anyone name any victories for punishing the police that Sharpton has gained in his entire life? Oh, y'all, young people need to listen to me because I'm practical. He went to Florida after Trayvon Martin was murdered, held a rally, and the murderer walked. You know, it seems to me that Sharpton, Benjamin Crump, and Sleaze Merritt, these guys are part of the problem. When has Sharpton done anything other than jump in front of the cameras? Or be on some panel for God knows what reason? He sees himself as being a media personality. If he's been so damn practical, then where the hell are the results? Before I listen to any fool tell me, listen to me because I'm talking about being practical, first I'm going to ask is, where the hell are the results? Shouldn't he have some wins? Shouldn't he have some results? As long as he's been advocating, where the hell are the freaking results? Sharpton is just like Big Bird. That's Reverend Mark Thompson, for those of you who don't know, the moron who speaks for Cobra. That clown was bragging that his organization is the longest standing organization advocating for reparations. You know, if when you brag about something like that, that means you're a failure. You're not supposed to be advocating for something henceforth and forevermore. At some point, you're supposed to achieve your goal. If the organization's been around since 1989 and nothing was happening until some people on the internet made an issue within the last 10 years, then that means your group is a failure. And the clowns claiming to be running it are failures. But considering that Thompson wants a comfortable place under white supremacy, we should be honest and admit that he hasn't failed at all. Oh, if you're talking about forwarding reparations, then yeah, he failed, but that's not his job and it's not his mission and he knows it. His job was to take that black energy that was being focused toward reparations and to contain it by getting us to run around in circles. Y'all go ahead and follow me as he marches around in circles. And there are a lot of black folks who think if we just march faster in circles, we'll get somewhere. He does one pathetic interview with Kamala Harris where he barely even alludes to reparations. One time, he allows her to say that, well, basically any government program that black people are eligible to apply for, that counts as reparations. And he just went, and on they went to the next white supremacist DNC talking point. So you got Reverend Al, and you got Reverend Thompson, two baby boomer fossils doing their preacher man hustle that white power has had these pulpit prostitutes doing since the plantations, and you got the white media signing off on it. Now, when it comes to Al Sharpton in particular, and the fact that the white media is suddenly giving him glowing articles because he's attacking people who demand the police be punished, isn't it amazing how the same white media who for 30 years called Sharpton a race hustler and they were pillaring him as creating racial tension, all of a sudden they've decided that he's a fount of wisdom. All of a sudden, you have the Washington Post, the paper of record inside the Beltway, the paper that publishes white establishment opinion inside the Beltway, and they're lauding Sharpton. And they're not casting any aspersions on him. They're not saying the controversial Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton, who himself has made controversial statements on race, who has been controversial on the issue of race. Notice how they're not saying that about Sharpton. Oh, yeah, they're not taking little slick shots at him to say, well, this is not really somebody who has credibility. Notice how they don't do that. You say something that the white media likes, then all of a sudden, all of those little grimy little side shots they would take at you, all of a sudden those fall out of the coverage. They don't mention that anymore. It used to be not so long ago that anytime Sharpton made a comment, anytime someone mentioned Al Sharpton, the white media would make certain to mention Tawana Brawley and that Sharpton is controversial. Oh, this guy's a clown. Oh, Al Sharpton, he's just trying to get in front of the cameras. He just wants some attention, that's all. But the white media's not doing that anymore. They haven't been doing that for a while now. Al Sharpton's no longer controversial. See, this is the white media demonstrating that they can rehabilitate you at will. All they have to do is just stop saying that you're controversial, and why? That means that basically you're mainstream. And what did Al Sharpton have to do to lose the label of controversial? Just lie through his teeth. Toe the white media line, that's all you got to do. And he did it. Just so he can have a weekend gig on MSNBC. Yeah, that white supremacist respectability that he's been hoping to get a piece of, here he is in his twilight years. And he's making it clear that his final act in this world is going to be to help prop up white supremacy's efforts to oppress black people for the next 500 years. And before it's all over, you're going to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris openly doing the same thing. The Democrats are as dedicated to preserving the enforcement arm of white supremacy as the Republicans. Right now, they're laying the groundwork for it. But you will be seeing them saying it. Kamala Harris, Police Chief Val Demings, NYPD Officer Eric Adams, New York Mayor Eric Adams. Oh yeah, if you want the white media to give you glowing reviews, all you gotta do is make sure that you had some hand in law enforcement. White media will be singing your praises, just as long as you're not locking up any white cops. Well, the black media is giving these bootlicks thumbs down. This slate of flunkies who the white media tries to glamorize as being black success stories, the black media is unmasking them for the bootlicks for white supremacy that they are. Punishing the police is becoming the litmus test for black voter support, and that is something that terrifies the white media and the left arm of white supremacy that they speak for. They do not want punishing the police to be the litmus test, where you got to show that you're punishing these thugs in blue. You got to show that you're breaking the enforcement arm of white supremacy. Why, we don't want that to become a central plank of any platform. Oh, no, you want to have a police department, you can have them, but you got to show that there is a robust regimen in place that seeks out the white supremacists and that puts them in prison. And prison does not mean any 5 to 10 years. What it means is 50 to life. 25 ain't enough. They got to do the hardest time there is. We are going to make punishing the police into the national pastime. The white elites who the Democrats serve, they're the ones who write the laws. And they write them so that their theft and graft is legal, quote unquote. Now, no minority who has subverted the law to this extent can exist for very long before the people rise up and take them down. So how do you make people accept their own systematic deprivation? How do you get them to sit on their hands and bite their tongues and do nothing while a corrupt elite steal everything and leave the people with nothing? Organized violence. That's how you do it. In practical terms, the quote-unquote law is nothing more than a list of things that the government says it will put the use or the potential use of state violence behind. Full stop. That's what the laws are. The laws are nothing more than a list of things that the state makes it clear that we will put violence behind, or at the very least there's going to be the potential use of state-sponsored violence behind these things. Obey the criminal code, or they're going to send white supremacist thugs with badges to kill you. Abide by the civil code, or they'll send white supremacist thugs with badges to arrest you. And if you give them any problems, they'll kill you. When you write laws that say the people who own all the wealth will pay no taxes, that's tyranny. Full stop. And it's not even a question of whether or not it's tyranny. So, how do you get 97% of the people to allow their status as an underclass to be enshrined into law? How do you get them to allow 3%, the most corrupt, least deserving 3% of the population, to get away with that, and for that to be a fact of daily life? You need to make sure that the people are aware, the 97% must have it hammered into their heads daily, that the state has a large enough apparatus of organized violence ready to kill in the interest of that corrupt white elite. And that violent apparatus is immune from the law, immune from the will of the people, the very people who are being brutalized by this apparatus of violence, that they can have no effect on it whatsoever. That has to be hammered into their heads. But what if the people get fed up? They lose their fear and discover their spine. And they use their numbers to say enough is enough. We're going to punish the thugs with badges, do it ourselves by hand if we have to. What happens then? Well, it won't be long before they bring that same energy to the laws that make their poverty the law of the land. That's the way it's always gone historically. After you eliminate the guardians of elite power, nothing left to do but to eliminate the elites themselves. This is the way it's always gone. And the white elite in the United States understand that. So that's the reason why it doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans, they are all terrified of the idea of punishing the police. There can be no punishment for the police because the function that they serve is to guarantee the prosperity, the unquestioned prosperity, and the unquestioned corruption of the white elite. That's their job. Their job is to make it where if you start thinking to yourself you're going to question that or challenge that, well, they can kill you and claim you committed a crime. The police are indeed the thin blue line. They are the line separating the society from justice. The Democrats are as racist as the Republicans. But since black voters are consolidated under the Democratic Party, that means our voting for them or withholding our votes can have an impact on them and on those other non-black groups who are hoping the Democrats are going to give them something. And that's why there's this jihad by the Democrats to try to browbeat and smear and shame and coerce and attack us into silence. That's the idea. They got to take those non-black Democratic supporters and try to turn them against us. That's why they're doing it. It's a matter of they got to find a way to browbeat us back into obedience. And they want to see if they just keep up this sustained barrage. They've been doing it for 2 years now. If they just keep it up, hopefully we'll start to crack. Hopefully we'll start to break. Oh, you're talking about punishing the police? That's a problem. That's the problem. That's the problem. This isn't happening by happenstance. There's a program at work here. The memo's gone out that these black folks at the grassroots are making demands that threaten white supremacy, and they have to be stopped. You can't do a full court press, so what you do is you send out 1 or 2 black bootlicks. Obama here, Clyburn there. Okay, doors open, here comes James Carville and some DNC shills. Here comes Al Sharpton. That's a full court press at that point. Only ones left to do it, and they think that they've greased the skids for it now. Only ones left are going to be Biden and Kamala Harris. Expect that to be their political platform for 2022 and 2024. Everyone's going to be confronting the threat to the country, wokism. And by the way, if this tactic of taking an otherwise obscure word and then introducing it to the culture as something that it's not, so that you can attack it, if that tactic sounds familiar, it should. It's the same thing that the Manhattan Institute's operative Chris Rufo did with the term critical race theory. Both the major parties operate out of the same playbook. After all, they work for the same masters and they have the same enemy. Black people, specifically black people whose ancestors were slaves in the United States. We are not enemy number one, we are the only enemy. When the U.S. was saying that the Nazis were a threat to the human civilization's existence, they treated Nazi POWs like their buddies, but they treated black servicemen as the enemy. When the U.S. was claiming the Soviet Union was going to take over the world, they routinely had parties and meetings with the Russians. All the while, they were lynching and burning black folks' churches and turning fire hoses on black people, and in many cases, killing black people in the streets. After September 11th, the U.S. claimed that Islamic extremists were the greatest threat that the world had ever seen. But Guantanamo Bay has only ever had a handful of prisoners compared to the black people incarcerated in the United States. The U.S. was more concerned about stop and frisk than they were the war on terror. So, have all of this dog whistle language for white racists to get behind the Democratic Party, has that done anything to shore up Joe Biden? Well, the proof is in the pudding. Biden's approval rating has fallen to a new low, this after the previous new low that it had fallen to just a week ago. It's because Biden and the Democrats' asinine strategy of cultivating a bumper crop of Biden Republicans hasn't worked and is not going to. If all of these casual racists that the Democrats keep trying to woo, if these guys have a choice between hardcore white supremacists and these white supremacists with false liberal rhetoric, they'll go with the hardcore white supremacists every single time. They don't want diet white supremacy. The problem is not that there are some black people who are turning off would-be Democratic voters. The problem happens to be that this country has been a white supremacist toilet for 500 years. The problem is that there is a majority of people in this country from the dominant society who happen to love white supremacy. They gobble it up. They want it every single day. And these people, if they are not open white supremacists, they are highly sympathetic and supportive of those who are. Be it your politicians or your pundit class or your so-called activists. That's the problem. Until it becomes okay to say that in the popular arenas of political discourse, until that becomes standard operating procedure for American political discourse, then anything else is a lie. This idea of we're going to teach the people who have benefited from white supremacy for 500 years why they're not on board with it, they certainly don't like it. As long as you keep telling that lie, then the situation is going to persist. It will persist because the black demands for justice and empowerment are not going to stop. We're calling out the oppression, we're calling out the injustice, and we're calling out those who benefit from it. Oh, you're hurting our feelings, you're going to make us mad. That's just another way of saying I should care about your feelings. I don't give a damn about your feelings. I don't give a two-bit damn about the feelings of a white supremacist or those who benefit from white supremacy, which to me is a distinction without a difference. You can bring in Barack Obama or Kamala Harris or whatever other irrelevant empty suit you want. You can bring in Al Sharpton. You can bring in this Reverend Thompson. You can bring in James Clyburn or Skeletor from the Bayou, whoever the hell else you want to bring in. Whatever wrinkled up racist or bootlick that you want. I don't give a damn because we don't listen to them. They are not the ones who are going to be writing the next chapter of history Black empowerment will. The white media attempted to totally ignore us, and that didn't work. Now they're attempting the exact opposite. They're going to totally all-out attack us. And that won't work either. And this is something that we're going to have to start getting comfortable with. Because what they're hoping for is that black folks are going to be seeing all of these white media interests, all of these black bootlicks, and all of these white Democrats saying, you're going to cost us things. You guys, you're going to ruin it for all of us. As Sharpton said, we could lose it all. Lose what? I could lose my weekend show on MSNBC. What the hell they need me for if I can't corral you dumb niggers? That's what Al Sharpton's scared of losing. Well, you know what? Good. I say you lose it all. We'll take it all. And if you don't want to lose it, then that means you do what we say. You don't pay no never mind to the squealing suburbanite bigots that you're trying to woo. They don't matter anyway. It's this black grassroots that matters. And if they say that they lost office because of us, good. Wear that like a badge of honor, because it is. What it means is we have finally come into our own where we can deny these scumbags what they want. We can punish them ourselves. This is a battle of wills. And those who have decided they're going to put their chips on the Democratic Party, I'm talking about non-black folks who have decided that. Well, they need to understand that until black people's demands are met, you're not going to be holding any major office. You're going to be losing office. And the reason why is you need black people in order to get those offices. You need our numbers. Because the Hispanics are trying to break for the Republicans, the Asians doing the same thing. You need a reliable group that votes as a bloc. And we're the only game in town. That being the case, you're not going to tell us what it's going to be. We're going to tell you what it's going to be. You are not going to tell us that our righteous demands for justice are impractical, or that they're not feasible, or that there's something wrong with us for demanding that we not merely be treated as human beings, but that we have our power and that we have it freely and that nobody is going to threaten us or oppress us. You're not going to tell us that there's something wrong with us for doing so. And you're also not going to tell us that there's something wrong with us for making sure that the historical record is told exactly the way that it happened. White supremacy is incompatible with the truth. It is incompatible with democracy. And they also understand that if they did not have organized violence behind what they say, they would also be incompatible with reality. And that's the real threat here, an existential crisis. If we keep up the pressure, if we are uncompromising, then it's not going to be long before they have to actually come to terms with what we're saying. Especially when we start putting resources behind our words, stepping into the political arena and start to deal. They know that's where this is ultimately going. Sooner or later, those grassroots folks are going to get tired of the game of how much pressure can we put on these white racists who are never going to do anything. It's going to be a matter of, no, we're taking charge. They know that's where this goes next. You think you want anyone talking any of that stuff about foundational black Americans or descendants of American slaves or talking about punishing the police in the very halls of power and saying it all the time? They're like, hell no, we do not want that to be a standard part of political discourse in this country. Not because it's unpopular, but precisely because of the fact that it is popular. The country will have to come to terms with it. As Dr. John Henry Clark said, if this country had democracy for so much as a single hour, it would fall. Well, bring it all down, I say. Because unlike the bootlicking scumbag Reverend Al, those of us over here in the B1, we understand that we have absolutely nothing to lose from the fall of this sick, wicked white supremacist system. On the contrary, we have everything to gain. Black media only exists because of you. If you value this kind of uncompromising commentary and insight, then be sure to hit us up on Cash App. And don't forget to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that.